deep into scouting for the pilot, found this block of, derelict buildings on North 6th Street and had a great view looking down 6th Street to downtown Tulsa and the skyline there, and had some great kind of peripheral sort of businesses and neon lighting and just different elements, and really looked also like something that if it needed to be expanded later on, you have more interesting buildings kind of going in both directions too.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor, a series that focuses on the design and decor of the stories that excite us and ignite our imagination, where we discuss the collaboration between set decorators and production designers and hear first-hand accounts of how these works of art came to be, from their inception, ideas on a page, to completion, when we get to sit in the dark and experience them collectively.
Welcome to Inside the Set with Set Decor. I'm David Hack, SDNSA, and today I have the great pleasure of interviewing Tavf, Sampson, and Brandon Tonner-Connolly on their fantastic FX noir crime thriller, The Lowdown. I've been looking forward to this all week. I started watching it when it first came out, and I just binge watched it again. I'm a huge Ethan Hawke fan, and now I'm a huge fan of y'all's work, and I can't wait to hear your process. And so I'd just like to start with that. How did you come to the project? Who first contacted you? Brandon, I guess it was you first, and what attracted you to it, and kind of quick process of how you were drawn into this.
Yeah. And thanks so much for having me here and having us here. Great to talk with you. And, David, I'm a fan of your work as well. So really great to be able to sit down and talk through everything. So I kind of came to the project through Sterling Harjo, who's the showrunner, writer-director, and we had done a show called Reservation Dogs together, which Tavf was also set decorator of. And we did that show, and then toward the end of the last season of Reservation Dogs, Sterling started talking about this next project, and it was sort of in an abstract way. He kind of rented out the local independent movie theater here, Circle Cinema in Tulsa, and showed the movie The Long Goodbye, the Robert Altman movie with Elliot Gould. And so, he showed that sort of as, this is where my head is at right now, and just kind of what I'm watching and what I'm, thinking about. And so that was kind of an introduction to material of The Lowdown. And, we kind of started to slowly talk about, sort of a neo-noir, new Hollywood kind of inspired show that, rather than following a detective through like a dreamy Los Angeles or through, a New York landscape, followed through this Tulsa landscape and kind of got at the history of Tulsa and some of the history, especially that, people want to forget about Tulsa or that's been difficult to reconcile with. So, it really all kind of started at the end of Reservation Dogs and just talking about those influences, and that kind of eventually gelled into The Lowdown. And the next year we kind of shot the pilot, went away for a year, and then came back and did the main series and everything, and been here in Tulsa ever since.
Well, that's fantastic. I really, when I hear you say that, having worked with directors multiple times, I can tell when something is clicking. And it just seemed like when I was watching it, there was a cohesiveness to everything I was seeing. And I've worked in Tulsa before, so I kind of know it, and I kind of learned the history of it from working there. And y'all just communicated it so wonderfully. I mean, and it just seems seamless from scene to scene to scene, and following Ethan through all the different things you had to do. And we kind of start with that. I know the North 6th Street was y'all's kind of back lot, which wasn't was kind of an abandoned, forgotten street.
As much of a back lot as Tulsa has. Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that and how that kind of came to be in the location scouting. And then once you show up and see all these kind of bombed out buildings and turn them into these fantastic sets, you stand there and go, oh God, what have I got myself into? And then you realize now you're totally free to artistically just go do what you want to do. You aren't held in by anything. And it was must have been thrilling, and it's quite a challenge all at the same time.
No, exactly. I think you nailed it there. It's thrilling and also terrifying at moments. Thrilling, but No, we started off, and the geography in the script was very specific about, the bookstore, Hood Owl Books, being near the diner, and then having, the lawyer's office around there, the record store, all these kind of pieces very close to each other. So we knew that, we were looking for that. And we also knew that, we wanted to create an actual geography for the show, to have, a world that you can kind of walk through, and that the viewer can kind of watch Ethan's character, walk around in and just kind of inhabit in that way. So we scouted, trying to use different, looking for, okay, let's find the diner first as the anchor, and then we'll build everything else off of that. And, it just didn't really seem like the geography was ever kind of there until, deep into scouting for the pilot, found this block of, derelict buildings on North 6th Street, and had a great view looking down 6th Street to downtown Tulsa and the skyline there. And had some great kind of peripheral sort of businesses and neon lighting and just different elements, and really looked also like something that if it needed to be expanded later on, you have more interesting buildings kind of going in both directions too. And, saw that, okay, we could make this one space into the bookstore, we can make this other space into the record store, we could make this into the diner around the corner. And, none of the buildings had working power, none of them had running water. The interiors were all completely stripped and kind of bombed out. And, when we first found them, I did think that people were going to say that I was crazy, and that is one of those things where you're like, I think this could be really great, but everyone's going to say that I'm crazy. It's never going to go anywhere, and then we'll figure it out. And then, honestly, everybody was just like, this seems like, this is a little ambitious and, wild, but we brought Sterling there, and he immediately was very into it also, and just kind of was able to see how it could come together, and how, knowing that we had all worked together since Reservation Dogs also, and done 3 seasons of that, and with this amazing team, with Tavf and with everybody else on the team, I think that we kind of, he kind of had confidence in us that we were going to make this strip of kind of bombed out buildings into, the world of the show and into the backlot of the show. And so, everybody, to my surprise, nobody said that we were too crazy, or nobody said, that. So we kind of just went to work with the concept art, and went to work mapping everything out, and went to work actually kind of designing the spaces.
There it is.
Yeah, just the before photos, which, and
are my most terrifying day, seeing this space.
Yeah, and it's funny because, again, there was really nothing there. We built all the walls, the flooring, the ceiling, all those elements, and, built some of the wild walls also to help out with production. And, there's something about having these spaces be real and having them be out in the real world that I think, Sterling and Ethan, everybody kind of were able to draw energy from. But there's also something fun as a designer, also to kind of feel like you have to solve this situation in a way. And there are some kind of, a kind of like hard and fast elements to work with in terms of space, in terms of size. You're really kind of trying to express the design as, it suits the characters and create the world, but at the same time, working within these restrictions, and that can sometimes lead to things that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of otherwise, or, to ideas that you wouldn't have had otherwise. And I kind of love that sort of inspiration, and that sense of discovery. That's, it's almost, I was reading this author, Nick Flynn, was talking about writing memoir versus just writing straight fiction, and how with memoir you do have, a wall or two that's kind of like a fixed thing that you need to sort of work around or work in and out of. And whereas fiction, you're kind of just making it all up. And I think there's something that's really fun about, having these kind of these firm things that you have to go off of that lead to this discovery, or that you feel like you're, inspired to stay truthful to in a way.
Dad. Dad.
What are you doing here?
Please, Dad, are you okay? You stink.
Oh, yeah, I'm good. What's going on?
Originally, we said that we were going to maybe try and still build Lee's apartment. In the script, it's supposed to be upstairs from the bookstore. We talked about, okay, maybe we could still do that. And we kind of looked upstairs from those main spaces, and there were, again, some really sort of decrepit stripped spaces that had been apartments at one point. And we looked in there and said, we could just actually do it all here. And we could kind of just, save that time and save those resources, condense them all into this one block, so that, we get more time to shoot here. We're not moving as much, so that helps production. And then it wasn't until a little bit later that we found out that Actually, in those apartments upstairs, the kind of loose inspiration for Lee Raybon, Leroy Chapman, had actually kind of lived in those apartments also at one point. So it just kind of felt right on so many different levels, logistically and, or creatively, and also sort of in this deeper sense as well with that. So.
Let's see, Lee's apartment. Well, you can kind of see in this top right photo, there's a stocking there, which is, of course, a nod to his kid in the show, but this actually did belong to the original, the real Lee, who we loosely based this character off of, something his son had made him. So it says dad on it, and it belonged to him that his sister had. And so she lent it to us for the show, and thought that was really beautiful. Obviously, Lee has a daughter in this, but we wanted to try, this is a pretty rugged space, but he is a dad trying to make it the best for his kid. And so I don't know if you noticed, but in the scene where she's sleeping over, the pillowcase is actually changed to like a horse pillow. It's like a real pillowcase with like a picture of a horse. It seems kind of vintage. And so we wanted to sort of change that in and out as him like attempting to be like a good dad. Like he's not going to make her sleep on the old ratty t-shirt as a pillowcase. He's going to change it out for her when she's sleeping over. And so we try to put those little details in there to show that he's really trying his best to be the best dad for her he can.
Yeah, that's something. I was a single dad too, or still am a single dad, and my kid was raised on movie sets, flying off to wherever I was working, and there was always that dichotomy, the same way he felt about his passion for his work, his passion for his family, and his kid was number one, and sometimes they collided. You had to make it work, and he really did. He was in this horrible thing with these paddlefish mongers, and the first thing he's running back looking for his daughter.
Yeah, exactly.
He wasn't thinking of himself or what he'd just been through. He just wanted to get to her. And
so trying to make it homey for her, and the rare days that she's sleeping over. So trying to add little details like that in, and keeping that stocking up all the time. Something that he's always has something of his daughters nearby. In his home space.
Yeah.
You know what? We should take a look. I know we have a great clip of Ethan walking down 6th Street showcasing multiple sets right in a row. If you wouldn't mind just kind of giving us a little video dialogue as he strolls down your wonderful set street, which is your backlot.
Oh, yeah. So this is, the first time that we really see the exterior of our 6th Street sets. This sort of block that we had found and converted into all of our main kind of spaces. And, this is sort of what it was designed as, and what it was intended for was for, Ethan to be able to walk from the diner past, Touch of Vinyl, the record store, to the lawyer's office and interact with all these different characters and kind of have it feel hopefully like a real world feels lived in. And, again, nice to be able to have the different colors and have the different sort of light sources in there, and just sort of introduce the character of Dan Kane, who's sleeping on his couch.
It's nice because this is his block, it's his world, it's his home, and these cast of characters, these goons on the street sort of make up his family more or less, and we see them a lot, and this is sort of his hub, and so nice to sort of get that long pan to introduce everyone very softly into this.
There's the armadillo, and I feel like this is such a great shot. I'm so happy that they were able to kind of pay it off like this, and have a mentor, and then the musical accompaniment is great too. And it's again him just kind of looking over his kingdom and just feeling like, oh, I'm home in this way. This is like his space that he has kind of control over in a way, even though it's chaotic and wild. And again, to go upstairs after that and, to have the apartment actually kind of be upstairs from our space was nice, I think, for everyone to kind of actually feel like, this is a cohesive world. And this collage, which I could talk about for hours, and I have to the chagrin of Tavf and other people, but I'll just say that we wanted the collage to feel hopefully, a bit, we were thinking, how could we make it specific and unique to our world? And that was something where, we came up with the idea, well, he's a journalist. The collage should be, him formulating his different articles and him formulating his different written pieces. And, David, I loved what you said before about how it feels like, it's kind of the inside of his head just kind of cracked open for everybody to see there. And that was really the intention of, this is kind of what Lee's mind is like, but we're going to put it up on the wall for everyone to see. And, kind of thought about some famous articles that Leroy Chapman, the inspiration, had written about Tate Brady, who is a Tulsa founding father who he wrote an article about connecting him to the Tulsa Race Massacre and the Confederacy, and got the city to reevaluate his legacy. And he had written about Elohim City, this white supremacist compound in rural Oklahoma. He had written about, kind of different things like that, and the Osage Hills murders, and kind of sort of land theft in the history of Oklahoma. And we kind of just took all those and ran with them, and found, had graphic designers working to come up with the background documents and creating different background documents and putting them all together. And, and then had, Tavf and Marcus and myself in the space kind of putting them all up and adding the little lived in touches, the receipts, the other things that Lee would have collected along the way. And I think when we finally revealed it, I kind of tried to talk through every individual piece of the conspiracy to Sterling and the DP and everybody else. And they thought I was insane, and they were pretty, concerned for my mental health and stuff.
Well, maybe we were seeing the inside of your head.
Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah.
I have a great video of Brandon explaining it to the DP, and the DP's eyes are just glazed over.
The film gods were on your side for sure. I'd say you're a crazy genius, not crazy. Crazy like a fox, talking them into it.
Too much at this point.
Yeah.
If we tell him we can do something, he'll believe it.
He might trust this too much. That's true. Yeah, exactly. I think it's,
in that regard too, not only is it a bombed out building, there's not a shred of dressing for any of these in there. You're not going in and just taking out things and adding character. You're ground up. Every book, every sheet of paper, every pencil, every paper clip was your job to bring it in. And it just was so flushed out in every regard and every set. It wasn't overdone. It was just spot on. And go a little bit through how you sourced all that and where you started. What was your first set that you said, this is what I'm going to build my vision around?
I have to say also, when I said that people were going to say that I was crazy, I also meant Tavf and our art director and everybody else in the art department. We're going to look at these spaces and say, wow, okay, thanks a lot. Thanks, Pat.
Well, they followed you, man.
Really working with nothing. As Brandon said in the beginning, this was sort of loosely based off of this real guy that Sterling had been friends with. And so when we sort of hit the ground running with the pilot, the first thing that we wanted to do was sort of make inroads with the people that he surrounded himself with here in Tulsa. And he had been part of this rare bookstore. I mean, this is, loosely based off of his life. And so I ended up meeting up with his friend that he ran the bookstore with, who had long not been part of it. And it just was going to a lot of lunches with people, taking people out for beers and some dingy Tulsa bars in the middle of the afternoon, and just trying to gather all these stories and asking such specific questions like, okay, what was this guy eating? What was his lunches like? What was he reading? Like, what was on his bedside table? Like those details matter so much when you're building someone from the ground up. And so we spent a lot of time with the community here. A lot of his friends that were so involved with the show and still are, they play like various, characters that come in and out of the show. They're at the diner, they're on the street smoking. So it really is sort of in the way that we did Res Dogs. Everyone in the community is part of the show, whether behind the camera, they get thrown in front of the camera, they're consulting with us, they're handing us personal items. So that's really how we begun to build his world, was just going through, his friends and family, getting personal items, and then sort of expanding, this fictional character onto these base items. Like, okay, if he had this, then where would he have gotten it? Then we start making up stories about that, and then sort of build layers from there for, his house, for the bookstore. Also keeping in mind that, as rugged as Lee is, at the heart of this, he's also a dad. And so also trying to incorporate a little bit of softness in this very gritty world that we made, trying to like change details here and there to make sure it was clear that, his daughter is his heart and soul of this project, of this show. So, little things like that. It was really fun to build in that kind of way. I really liked it.
It's really wonderful when you're basing it loosely or exactly on a character that lived amongst us to find those people that are around him.
Yeah. And you're getting these really incredible stories. I mean, the things that people are willing to share is just incredible when you're putting work out in the world like this, and the amount of stories that we're being told. I mean, really personal, deep, heartfelt stories. You're very honored to be able to, take these stories and put them on screen and be trusted in that way. There's a lot of trust that comes with that sort of exchange. But I feel like, we loved every minute of it, and we really fell in love with these people, and we consider them family members at this point.
Well, it shows. It definitely shows. And in that world, I mean, I definitely felt the palette around me when I was watching it. And y'all seem to have developed a really strong palette. And, everything from the red countertop and the, sweet Emily's to, his bedroom kind of having this crazy. I always felt like when you went in his bedroom, I was crawling inside his head. And just seeing the way he thinks, and it's just bouncing around all the time, and there's everything going on at once, and he's just moving and going and just enjoying it. When he was laying in that bed or sitting up or staring at the wall, I was just like, that's his thoughts in evidence in front of me.
We always felt that way, that his bedroom is like the inside of his head, and then the bookstore is his kingdom. And
it's like his heart downstairs,
but
but it was great. And I saw a little clip where y'all talked about that you did source the books, I think, from a local book vendor there.
Yeah, so that guy I was talking about, Sean, this is really kind of incredible story, but he ran that bookstore, 15 years ago, and it has since shut down. And he worked at Gardner's, this used bookstore in town, when we were doing the pilot. And so after we had many lunches with him and dinners, and he helped pick out all of the books with us, like every single one, because he was working at this used bookstore at the time. So it was really, every single title, everything you see is something that, our character would have had or currently has in contemporary time if he were still here. And but the amazing thing that happened was, between shooting the pilot and then going to season, was he was able to release the original Rare bookstore that he had worked at with Lee, and it is now open as a store, and he's now running it. And so it's kind of this beautiful, fiction bleeds into reality of the story that we're telling. And he's still, every time I'm still buying books from him constantly for different sets. And he saves boxes every week. He texts me saying, I put a new box together for you if you haven't books.
Yeah.
I'm going to want that phone number.
Yeah, he's fantastic. He's so great.
Looks like that is wonderful. And the great thing about it too is, when you probably, and I'm sure this occurred to y'all when I've done radio stations and stuff, you end up and you walk in and the grips or the electrics are standing there flipping through books. People are pulling them off. The crew just builds everyone's enthusiasm for what you're doing, whether it's records or albums or whatever. But bookstores, I always find that there is some cerebral grip who's pontificating on the book he took off the shelf.
That happens a lot. A lot of books are always going missing.
Yeah,
this
just
book
trying to get them back on shelves after they take them off the shelves. Just no, it's work.
Ethan took some books. Sterling's always like, "Can I have this?" And we're like, "Yes, you can have it."
Yeah, I guess so for you, but that's kind of at the heart of the philosophy. What we try to do also is that with the bookstore, we kind of handpicked all those books because we really want the environments that they're making the show in to be, as special and as kind of intimate and detail filled as possible. And, so we kind of think about the people who are in the room when it's actually being filmed as much as we think about what the final product is going to be or what you're going to see through the camera. And we want the director or Ethan or, or a grip or anybody on the crew and people from the community who stop by just to be able to walk down the aisles and pick any book from anywhere and say, oh man, this is such a cool book. And yeah, this definitely belongs on this set. And then, have Ethan get inspired by that and then roll that into his character and, roll that into everything else. So we try to build that.
How many times did you have the opportunity to sell books to people who just walked in off the street thinking it was a book?
Well, when we're building this set, oh my gosh, not only were we in there and we're like sweating because there's no AC and there's no electricity yet when we were building out the sets, but so many people off the street came in saying, oh my God, a bookstore. And at a certain point, I just stopped telling people that it was a set. And I was like, just let them come out. It's like, you know what, let them browse around.
Yeah. We need more books and less screens in this world.
Yeah. But to the point that Brandon was saying, we don't have control how something is going to be shot at the end of the day. We don't know what the DP and the director are going to do. And so it's our job to really make this a full 360 world, every detail mattering, because we don't know what is going to be shot at the end of the day. And so we want to be proud of every single corner that we see.
If they stop in front of a bookcase, you don't know which books are behind his head.
You don't know what an actor's going to grab and play into a scene. Ethan's also the master of just like comedic improv, and he's always grabbing a prop and grabbing a thing, and so like you don't know what he's going to do, and so
Or he's sitting in a chair that you thought nobody would sit in, and
then he's
just like
yeah.
I don't know what it was. You talked about grabbing a prop, something that stuck with me at the time, and when I was going through the photos, I saw it. At one point, he hears someone in the back, and he comes walking down the aisle with this stick. And it has this strange cutout head. I don't know if it was a cane or what it was.
Yeah.
I was wondering if it was the prop, or is that something that he just improv?
That was something that we addressed into the set. I probably found this thing on like the Goodwill trash or something, but I just thought it was so cool because it was like hand painted, and I originally put it in the store because I was like, oh, we had put these boxes on top of the bookshelves that you can see that are actually these old fry bread boxes that our friend Ryan Redcorn, it's his company. And so he had all these vintage boxes, and we're like, can we use some of your beat up boxes that Lee would have used as extra book storage? And so we're like, okay, well, we need a stick in case he needs to like get to these boxes. In theory, not that Ethan would actually do that. And so we had this stick laying around. And then I remember Sterling called us like the night before that scene. He was like, hey, is there anything in the bookstore Lee could grab as like a bat or something that's already there? And I was like, well, there's this stick.
beautiful stick that we have. Yeah.
It's such a great moment because he's like supposed to be so tough and bad. He's
Yeah.
a little cartoon. It was just so perfect. And I did notice those fry bread boxes. I did.
Yeah, that's another one of those like fun details where like it totally brings in our community, and especially us being in Tulsa, working with Sterling, and the people were around like always trying to bring like some indigenous element into things, and so there's stuff peppered everywhere that lends to indigenous culture, and so we just thought that was a funny one to have.
How did you and your buyers find shopping in Tulsa?
Ooh, well, we'll say this is a prop-free place. There's no prop houses. We're not fabricating stuff. It's definitely not the normal route of finding stuff. Facebook Marketplace is always our number one resource for things, which is hard because you're truly getting things so individually. And like, I'll find something that's so tiny, like this big, and I'm like, oh, but we have to have it. We have to spend a day driving to like Tahlequah to get this thing, But we're mostly doing Facebook Marketplace, and honestly, we have such amazing relationships with our vendors at this point from being here for all seasons of Res Dogs. I mean, vendors, we say vendors loosely because it's a lot of people that have like a hoarder's house, that we just happened to become friends with years ago. And we're like, who's going to have a box of old paperwork from the 80s? That guy, this garage, and so we have like amazing people in town. And, if we need one thing, they're pinging all their other friends that own other stores. And so it's really, everything is from the community. Like, we're really not ever buying stuff online. We're not ever prop housing things. Like, every single thing we're getting from the community. Even the diner booths at Sweet Emily's we got from a hamburger place downtown that they hire recently incarcerated people that are getting reintroduced back into the workforce and back into life. And they were just happened to be redoing their burger booths from like the 90s, and they were getting rid of them, and we're like, oh my god, these are perfect, like, can we buy them? They're like, no, we don't want any money. They wanted to give it to us for free, but we made a hefty donation as a thank you. But even stuff like that, it just means that much more that everything's coming from the community.
Yeah, when the community gets behind you like that, one person talks to another, and yeah, it's wonderful. That's what I love about true location work,
Yeah.
You're not in a hub where you have to get to know the people around you to find things,
And it's such a different mentality than, working out of New York or LA or Atlanta, where the moment you tell someone you're with a film, like, immediately jaded, or they want to know how much money they can get. And it's so the opposite here. The minute you tell them you're like working with Sterling or we're doing this show, everyone is so excited. They want to like give you their firstborn child. They're like, come into my house, come to my mom's house. We want to give you this thing. We want to show you this. And that's really how I would say all of these sets have been put together.
Yes. I mean, the diner, there's the wallpaper is something that for me is an important element, where when I was kind of first designing the space, wanted a combination of textures, and probably wanted something that spoke to some pastoral scenes, the type of thing that doesn't necessarily draw your attention. You can kind of look right over it, but at the same time, if you're having a cup of coffee and smoking a cigarette by yourself at 2 a.m., you might be able to spend a couple minutes unraveling it, or kind of staring at it and entertaining yourself. And so we had that, and kind of started talking with Sterling about about that concept, and jokingly, basically, we kind of just said, oh well, what if the pastoral scenes are of Reservation Dogs scenes, and then kind of quickly said, well, does that have to be a joke like that? Maybe that could actually be something that's meaningful if we kind of do it in a subtle enough way that you can't really see it unless you know it's there. And so then we did have picked some favorite moments from Reservation Dogs, had a great illustrator hand draw them, and then kind of had our graphics team kind of tile them together and had it printed locally, and then put it up and aged it. And I think everybody, as you can see, there's a lot of similar crew from Reservation Dogs. So when they all got in there the first day and saw it, and even when Sterling saw it up and everything, there's
people started crying, and we had crew members that got emotional when they walked into that set for the first time, seeing that and sort of bringing that into our current world, our old world into our current world. And so that was really special.
Yeah,
it's very special. That's a great testament to y'all's creativity and dedication to your work. Those wallpapers exist out there, but this is the only place this one exists.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. And thank you for saying that. And I feel like that is something that we talk about a lot, is like, keep it specific, like we kind of, I think people are probably tired of hearing us say that in the art department of the tech world, but it's like, you just, we're building this unique world for this show. And kind of, as you just said, there are many wallpapers out there, but this is the only wallpaper that exists in the world of this show. And that's, how we want to treat every object ideally in that way. And I think that's something that, I really value in Tavf's work, and that they do so well in the set tech department in the show is, everything is so specific to this world. Everything is so kind of unique to this world in its own way. And that, makes it really compelling to be building out the whole visual landscape of the show with these kind of unique things that make it really specific, that make it a really strong sense of place. So.
Absolutely. And I've always found out through my career, building backstories that maybe no one gets is the joy of the job.
I agree. Yeah. I think that too.
It's like,
I think we get the most joy out of all of this than anyone.
Just generating that joy amongst your crew and giving them the freedom to behave and be creative in that way, it just infects the set. It really does. And it shows in this film and y'all's work that that was a joyful experience. Sure, it's hard, it's work and all that, and it's the film business, and there's numbers and money and pressure. But at the end of the day, we get paid to go to meetings and deal with budgets. This we would do for free.
Yeah. I find the scrappy way is the way that you end up having to get creative anyway in terms of resourcing stuff or making something like this, where it's like, okay, we don't have time for big company to make a wallpaper for this. Like, how can we get a little scrappy? And then we really start thinking okay, well, if we're going to do it this way, how can it mean something to somebody on the crew and the community, to one of us, to Sterling, the emotion of all these objects and these sets and all the things that artists building, it creates a real resonance in these sets. And I feel like it is infectious, and people feel it when they walk in, and they don't totally understand why yet until they really start looking around. And yeah, I think that's our real MO in terms of, collaborating together and building these worlds.
Totally. Yeah, we want to create the, kind of the seamless universe for them to step into in the seamless world and kind of get lost in it. And yeah, even if they don't realize that, why they're feeling the way they do, especially when they walk in, there is this sense of intimacy. There is this sense of, this is a space that we're all here to create this art together and to get lost into this process together. And that's really fun.
Did y'all have any stage sets at all on this show?
No, we kind of, all of our builds kind of came building them into these spaces on 6th Street. And then, we had a couple of other larger sort of, builds, but they were all, again, out at location. Episode 3, I think we had the paddlefish compound, and that, is something where we had kind of built a bunch of those structures and kind of had those going on. But in terms of the actual work, it was all kind of out in the actual Tulsa city, which, is one of those things also where we wanted to make sure that, they could have uninterrupted kind of exterior, interior work and, just working on reservation dogs also and knowing the kind of energy that, that Sterling and everybody kind of drew from being out in the world, being out in the community. Just, it felt like also that was something that, that would work well for us. Yeah.
Another one that is off the street kind of that I really enjoyed was the houseboat.
The houseboat for John Doe's character, the compound, was another instance where I was like, well, everyone's going to tell me that I'm crazy about this and then we're not going to do it. But we just,
found this rickety old boat that, oh man, it was those floors were basically falling in, but
it was in the harbor master's backyard, basically, the guy who runs the lake that, that we shot that episode on. And so the script said that there was a compound basically for, these paddlefish kind of bootleggers. But it, kind of specified there were a bunch of trailers there. And we just said, well, what if it's instead of trailers, what if his main thing is this houseboat that we're going to drag over here, everything.
Dragged it over.
Yeah.
Construction completely put it back together so that no one was falling through it, carpeted it, did everything.
Real, Werner Herzog Burden of Dreams type of situation, or Fitzcarraldo type of situation. That was a reference that bandied about a lot.
Yeah. Well, working on water is always tough. I thought, well, maybe one of the houseboat interiors was on a stage as a cover set, but y'all just rolled the dice and played outdoors the whole time. It sounds like.
And that was funny because that house, the Catalina house, for the of course the week we're dressing, it was the dead of winter and we just had this snowstorm. And so it was icy winds. We were trying to dress the top of it and everything kept blowing onto the frozen lake and just skidding across the lake.
Yeah, the lake itself was frozen. So everybody was like, are we going to be able to actually shoot this and do this here and everything? So
see the actor's breath. What are we going to do?
Yeah.
I was going to ask you what your biggest challenge was, but I think you just told me.
Yeah. That was a big one, certainly. I mean, I think, the bookstore is really the heart of the show in many ways. And that for me is something where it's okay, like we said, we had to have every kind of detail right and feel like it spoke to Lee's character and also be interesting enough visually that, they could shoot there as much as they needed to. I mean, I feel like, so that is, and some of, these are some of the sort of references and some of the stills from it now. But
we had a really fun time handwriting all the little notes that
were fun. Yeah.
Lee being a real shit punk rocker.
Which our amazing lead man Marcus Whitman also helped us out with. Yeah.
Really went hard on the notes.
We would kind of just sit there and be like, okay, so what about this? Or just kind of write them out and just come up with these ideas. But, and again, the concept art is something that from the beginning, wanted to have these little improvised elements like just the fan hanging down or just, the clip lights hanging around or, thinking about the different textures of the space and the drop ceiling, certainly, and all of that.
Also having, that kid area, I don't know if it's hard to tell in the show, but that corner where they're sitting down a lot, we specifically made an area for kids to draw because we're also this also lends to Lee's character. He's pretty rough, but he has an insanely big heart and he has a child. And so we wanted to make this a space for his daughter was growing up in and had grown up in. And so there's kid paintings around, there's crayons always on the table. We wanted to bring that element into it.
Yeah, exactly. And in this piece of concept art, there's just a couple of small details that we there's an armadillo up on the shelf there, which is another one of those things that kind of we saw early in the references and the other ones, and just said, well, that's something that really belongs in the
That
story.
was really funny because it was in the references and then it ended up in the concept art. We're okay, now my team, we actually really have to get this armadillo. And first of all, taxidermy is such a thing, we're with Disney. But it was really hard to find. But what we ended up finding was this faux armadillo. But the only ones we can find were Western. They had upholsters and a hat and a gun and a little sheriff badge. We're is this so ridiculous?
Yeah.
We're let's just do it.
Works even better at the regular armadillo. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I see him now back there.
Yeah.
He's a real star. Actually, when we were doing the premiere, the New York premiere, we got asked specifically from FX if we could bring the armadillo.
Yeah.
They wanted to show.
I'm just happy that somebody else appreciates it as much as I do, basically.
You never know what might become the next Maltese Falcon, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, thank you. That could play into the second season in a way if there is one.
How do I feel? I don't know. You know what I mean? we're not together. So what are you gonna do? I mean, she's happy. I mean, he seems cool. I mean, if not cool exactly, he seems okay. Damn it!
What are you looking for?
Oh, what's this?
Oh gosh. I mean, there's so much in here. You know, we used a lot of our native artists that we'd worked with on Res Dogs to sort of fill in these spaces. There's a piece right in the middle there. It's really hard to see, but it's actually a portrait of this artist, Joe Chamberlain, who passed away when we were shooting Res Dogs, but he was so instrumental in giving us things, gifting us things. And so that's actually a portrait drawn by another native artist, Dana Tiger, who we work with, of him. And so we wanted to honor Joe. And so that's actually a portrait of him. And then to the right of Lee, that sort of green veteran portrait, that's one of Joe's original pieces that we had from Res Dogs that he gifted us. So we wanted to put that in. That felt really special to honor him and his work and, you know, bring him into these sets for this new show.
Yeah, and I think if you in that collage as well, there are two sort of playbills that Ethan actually asked if he could put up that were from plays that he directed, Sam Shepard plays that he had directed. And, you know, I think after being back there for a minute, he asked, if he could add these elements to it from, his own life and his own kind of artistic practice, feeling that there was something akin to that with Lee. And we, of course, said, go for it and put it in a place that, that he could see when he was back there, and that would kind of, speak to his understanding of the character and his being in this world also, which was just really fun to talk about, even, Sam Shepard play with Ethan Hawke and everything. So let alone that.
Okay, so that piece that's above the record player, that framed piece was actually a picture that my grandpa had drawn that I found on Facebook Marketplace. This guy had it out in the sticks in Oklahoma, and I was like, I can't believe this guy has this piece. And I drove out there, and he had all of these hand-drawn items, and the story behind it, which I knew since I was a kid, was that my grandpa notoriously had no money, but he was sort of a known artist in Oklahoma. And there's this one restaurant run by this guy, Jack Shipley, who would always let him eat there for free if he drew on the placemats and traded it for food. And so this guy had all these pieces, and so we ended up buying them from him, and that was the original frame that he had it in the restaurant because it had been hanging in the restaurant. And so that is my grandpa Will Sampson's original placemat piece that he traded probably back in the 70s or 80s for a hot meal.
Yeah, Will Sampson, the actor and artist.
Yeah.
Wow, that's an amazing story, right?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and to help honor also, the Will Sampson connection, we have that case of rare books that are right underneath the register, and those are a collection of different, Tulsa and Oklahoma authors, and we have kind of a first or a rare copy of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest also to kind of get back to Will Sampson's work as well and get in there.
Yeah, you talk about some of the detail. I did notice in the bookstore also the behind the counter was just a feast for the eyes. I immediately recognized the Tulsa photograph framed, and then down below the Hictoids.
Yeah,
they're kind of a San Antonio band.
Yeah.
From Texas, and grew up, in Houston and Austin and San Antonio and all that. So I remember those guys, seeing them at clubs in Austin and all that. So I was just like, Hictoids.
The Hickoids thing was something that specifically I had seen, and I'm a real kind of a psycho about the references. I love the references at the beginning of any project. And, one of the things that we had kind of thought through, we're like, okay, if Lee grew up in Tulsa, then he's going to have spent some time in, Austin probably, or in, San Antonio, and just kind of known that general sort of area and looked at, sort of those cultural influences and those kind of bands and everything at the time. And then Hickoids is somebody who I was also a fan of, and was like, we gotta, one of those things that you see from the references that you see from like the earliest moments of thinking about the set, and then, are kind of bothering people for the next like 2 months or 2 weeks or however long it is before you actually have to put it on there to be like, okay, can we get that cleared? Did we get that cleared? Did we get this actual poster? Like, in time, that sort of thing. But thanks for noticing the details.
Yeah, no, it's one of those things, as a decorator, I look into those photos, and I'm always looking for inspiration from other people's work. When I watch something and I'm inspired by it, I go back and I'll stop and grab frames, and y'all's job really did that for me. Been at this a while now, and it was a real breath of fresh air to see this show.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it was really fun, and the details they're so fun for us. There's a lot of real family photos on there, a lot of old band flyers, old receipts, nods to indigenous artists. I mean, already like I see like 4 indigenous artists on this wall, that we wanted to incorporate. And so it's all really fun and important for us.
Yeah, I mean, Tavf and the entire set decoration team does such an amazing job also just making sure that, every detail is something that kind of matters and that anybody could walk on and kind of, gain an insight to the character from.
You're not just slapping Post-it notes up, you're really, really thinking about it, And,
Yeah. There's even like a dead little plant by the register that when we were doing research on Lee and meeting his friends and family, they had saved this plant that had been his for 15 years. And they're like, obviously this thing has been dead for 15 years, but I've been holding on to this plant and they let us have it. And so we put it right there by the register. Even that dead little plant holds a lot of meaning for someone that is going to be watching this show.
Absolutely. And it's a great little detail,
I think it really nods to Lee. He's trying, but he can't totally get it together.
He can't always pull it off in that way, but he wants to.
He tried.
Yeah. I mean, I think the biggest challenge overall, beyond the bookstore is just that Sterling really kind of writes in this way that creates this very human tapestry and has a kind of a lot of respect for each of the characters and kind of, even from Reservation Dogs to this, promotes a real sense of empathy for a lot of the characters. And, for us representing the visual world, we want to make sure that we're doing justice to each of the characters. So even if it's, a character that's just, we're only seeing their home once or we're only seeing, their space for a short time, we want to put an equal amount of care into it and an equal amount of detail into it and really kind of get at, the intimacy of that character's life so that we can kind of create that empathy for the viewer. And sort of just, follow through on that. And so that's kind of the greatest challenge too, is just, on the timetable with everything else going on to be able to really sort of put the care and the time into each of the sets and into each of the character spaces and to be able to kind of really portray them and build the world out like that. Yeah. Tax law office, another fun set. Again, just sort of building it into this raw space, building the walls, building the flooring, building the ceiling, and then, getting some fun textures in there and the colors that feel like they're right for the world, but differentiate it from Hoot Owl from everything else there. And again, just giving Ethan room to play and room to pick up a golf club or pick up anything else and kind of get into it.
This dog statue is definitely one of my favorites. This was something that Brandon had found in a reference, and we were like joking. We're like, oh my god, we got to get this thing, and then we're like, okay, maybe we actually got to get this thing because it's so goofy and so funny. And also, this is a comedy at the end of the day. So we're always trying to like put these quirky little things in there. So we just thought that was hilarious.
And next to his desk, there's a little dog holding a tray that has like his business card.
Some golf balls.
It'd be hard to clear.
It'd be the hardest thing in the whole show to clear.
It's hard to have it.
Yeah. Like there's so many fleeting characters sometimes, especially in TV. And like one of them that our friend who works on the show wrote us about, she's like, oh my God, this is so funny. This detail was Cyrus's cousin, the lawyer. We're in this office for like a couple minutes, lawyer's office. And we're like, okay, it's the lawyer's office. Like we have a million things to do and we just got to put this lawyer's office together. But we're like, okay, how can we make it more personal? It's his cousin. Then we're like, okay, why don't we make it look like it was his birthday this week? There's like sort of like droopy like birthday balloons in the corner that's like a dollar sign and like a happy birthday, and it's like one of those things like you don't really clock but you do, and it makes him more human and gives him a little bit of a backstory, even though we're never gonna probably know more about this guy or get any more screen time with him. So
I love that when he's going to put the book in the safe and he looks over his corner at Lee and like hides the combo. There's all those little active touches, that really take the show to the next level, in so many ways. Yeah. How was it working with the DP on the show? I felt like the lighting was very much a character in this. You had a lot of night stuff and creating moods and whatnot. And I just thought it was really beautifully lit. And I wondered how much collaboration y'all had.
Yeah, I mean the DP for the bulk of the season was Mark Schwartzbard, who we worked on with for Reservation Dogs for 3 seasons like that, and I had actually worked with him years before that on a really small feature in Las Vegas, when we were kind of both coming up in a way, and so we've always had sort of a shorthand and had the opportunity to sort of build this relationship over a few years, and it's really nice because he's a very talented, cinematographer, and he's also just a masterful storyteller. And I've seen him be able to kind of distill what, the story that Sterling wants to tell, or that, that the script wants to tell into visual terms in a way that's very efficient, but that's also very beautiful. And then also highlights our work. And I think that's, something where he kind of is an ally in that way. And I feel like, that's the sort of thing where, on different projects, you kind of, people come to it with different agendas sometimes and different ideas. And it's nice to always know that, no, we're on the same team, we're on the same page. And I have a genuine, sort of respect for your ideas. You have a genuine respect for our ideas. And, part of the fun of making the sets now is that Mark is such a huge booster. He will walk around and look at all the small graphics and all the small Easter eggs and all the small details. And then he'll kind of, walk up to Sterling even or whoever and say, hey, did you see this that these guys did over here? They made this. And like, it's a membership card from, something from the 70s that like this character's father would have had. And, that sort of a thing. So it's nice to kind of have that sort of relationship where, we both kind of want each other's work to be as good as possible. Because, in the end, I think we have the united purpose of like, yeah, we're here to make this show as great as it, possibly can be, and to tell this story. And also, as Tavf alluded to kind of have the, it's, the community is sort of gifting us with the opportunity to tell this story and entrusting us with the opportunity to tell this story. And I think he feels that weight too, in a way where, we want to get it right. And we also want it to be as great as it can be for them and for everyone. Yeah, and he and I just both love talking about like 70s noir movies also and everything. So that was
they love to hang out.
Yeah, I was wondering what maybe film influences kind of guided you when you were thinking about this film.
Yeah, I think in the in the beginning it was, and this was talking with Sterling also, was thinking about those 70s neo-noir, kind of new Hollywood sort of films like The Long Goodbye and
we watched Night Moves.
Yeah, Night Moves. Yeah.
Else? We
Chinatown, certainly.
Him and I will usually do movie nights before starting a season for references, and so we'll watch a movie like the first night of like the week of production that are sort of in the vein of the things that we're trying to create, or just even the tone, the color palette, something that sort of puts us in the mind frame of what we want to try and build. And so, we're watching a lot of movies.
Yeah, exactly. It was a lot of that. It was a lot of, Night Moves, which is a movie that I had seen a couple times before and really loved. And it's also fun because, Sterling will somehow get the local theater to project these things sometimes. So, everybody's in a movie theater actually watching the references and talking about them afterwards. And, for me also, I love those movies. So I was like, oh, great. Everybody here is trapped and has to watch these movies now. Has to talk to me about them and everything. So, so we got into Chinatown also, and a bunch of those different classics. I think we looked at some more contemporary things also, like No Country for Old Men, and Inherent Vice a bit as well. But, those were kind of more like tonally sort of things that, that Sterling had kind of pointed out or had thought about. Visually, we were kind of, and with the color palette too, we're trying to get to a point where, it felt like it was, could be alluding to that era a bit, but, kind of just collapsed the past and the present in a way, sort of got to the point where it's on the cusp of being modern, and the cusp of kind of being everyday, but never quite gets there. And, Tulsa's a place where it's extremely hot in the summer. I've learned over, my time on Reservation Dogs and everything. Tulsa's a place that's extremely hot during the summer, very bright, direct sunlight, or the winter, extremely cold, very icy, rainy. So there are seasons, and you wanted the color palette to kind of express that, and the general grit of the show to express that wear and that kind of age that everything should have to it. And so we kind of chose some colors that would show that off as well. Yeah.
Also always listening to a playlist at the beginning of a season. So for Lowdown especially, it was really fun.
Yeah.
Sterling suggesting songs. We're thinking of songs to do. So we have this compiled playlist that we were listening to the car a lot. And especially you and I would sometimes we would drive around Tulsa just being like, where could the Tulsa Beat office be? And we sort of poke around these derelict buildings. So we'd be listening to the playlists every day in the car, just sort of also getting in that mindset while we're looking at places. So.
Yeah, it's nice to be able to share the playlist with everybody in the art department too, and then and then kind of constantly hassle them about listening to it. Have you guys listened to the playlist yet? What do you think about this?
The soundtrack.
Brandon's homework question at the beginning of the meeting.
Yeah, the soundtrack for the show is great. J.J. Cale is one of my favorites. He's an incredible songwriter. Wrote great hits for Eric Clapton. Santana's covered his stuff. So hearing some of that stuff like when I heard The Sensitive Kind when that episode first started, I was like, oh, I'm gonna really like this. Music, so good in so many ways. Maybe I want to know a little bit. Also, did you interact much with your costume designer? I mean, the costumes in general, the wardrobe that they wore, I thought really kind of showed the characters on the outsides of their bodies. You had these guys that were the power elite wearing their suits and ties, and you didn't know what Ethan was going to wear. I'm sure there were things he got out of his own closet that he wore, So,
Or things he didn't want to take off. He put it on once. He's like, oh, I'm going to wear this the rest of the show. Like, okay.
Yeah.
that and a toothpick. Yeah, give him a toothpick.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it was great working with Alyssa. Alyssa's a very talented costume designer, and we sort of from the beginning, again, we had that connection from working on Reservation Dogs together. She was the costume designer for the third season of it, and so we already had a little bit of a creative shorthand, and also sort of just know how we like to work, and also we try to do these tone meetings, in the beginning, kind of once a week when we can. But otherwise, just, whenever we can catch up and just say, okay, so here's what's going on in my world. And I'll make sure that I'm sending the scouting photos that I like, or the things that we're kind of talking about to her, so that she can see the locations that we're picking. And so that, in addition to sharing, the color palette and all the different elements. So it's just a lot of sharing that way, and a lot of, again, conversing and kind of talking it through. And, I think because of that, hopefully it comes together in a way where, it feels like it's fully realized, and, kind of feels natural. I think that we, again, kind of really shared this commitment to having everything be, feel worn, feel kind of lived in, feel kind of really broken in. And that's something that, is a through line from the costumes to the sets, and everything else. And I think it's also just a testament to, the costumes team is so good, and Tavf and her team are so good, and I know that they're in constant communication too. So it's sort of a thing where we've all been kind of making these shows in Tulsa now for years together, and we have this kind of little community, or little kind of family atmosphere. And so because of that, it's everyone is interested in working closely together, and knows, okay, we're helping each other out. We're kind of trying to make sure that we're all on the same page about it at all times. So it's nice to have, kind of all that information being shared back and forth, and also just all that, mutual support.
Yeah. Similarly to costumes, they're not pulling from a big costume prop house here. They're doing the same thing that we are in Set Deck. It's Facebook Marketplace, it's Goodwill bins hunting, it's people in the community. And there's so much overlap, obviously, between art departments and them, where it's like, I found this shirt and I was like, oh, this would be so good for Lee. And so she took it and made replicas. I was like, but actually, could we have that back? Because I want to make it his pillowcase, because he's a guy that wouldn't buy himself a pillowcase.
That's awesome.
So we're constantly doing this.
Yeah.
Holds together of things, and like I said, for TV, sometimes there's, a character written in the show that, it's only written as like one or two lines. So you don't really have a huge grasp of like who this guy is. And so, there's a very fast collaboration between us and costumes. Like, okay, who is this guy? What are you putting him in? Okay, that's going to dictate like the world we're going to build for him. And so there's a lot of, doing things pretty fast. And we love Alyssa. She's so talented.
Yeah.
She's so easy to work with and so fun.
Yeah.
Well, it definitely sounds like, as a whole, y'all have had a lot of connections with all the departments, kind of going through this process of, working multiple shows, and it does show that it just seems like everything was kind of hand in glove. No joke to the prop department, but I'm sure the prop department was like right there with you on
yeah.
all that too.
Giving the prop department their due, like just with everything else, they really do kind of, I think part of the, the experience here that is so much fun, and that, that really kind of speaks to our methods. It's like everyone enjoys kind of spending time together too. So, we're all talking during the workday, but then, after that too, we're all kind of still involved in conversations, and, how can we make this character even more vibrant? What props can we bring to it? What these things stuff.
I do think that's sort of like the gift and the strength of the film family we've made here through Res Dogs, is that, when the workday ends, we're still voluntarily hanging out with each other. Like, we want to go spend time together. We want to go get dinner or get a drink, or we go to a book reading or whatever. And so it's in those like softer, like off work moments that you're still having these free flowing conversations, creative conversations. And that's where I think some of our best ideas are born. And so it's nice. It's a very easy way to work with people and people that you love.
Stories on Woody for now. Oh, here he is. How about that Washburn piece trending nationally?
But yeah, so I mean, the Heartland Press was something where it's based on, again, a real publication called This Land, which Leroy Chapman, the loose inspiration for Lee's character, wrote for with Sterling, and that's kind of how they met and got to know each other. And so, you know, when we were recreating it or being inspired by it to make the Heartland Press, the building that we kind of actually made it in is actually the building that they had This Land in. It had fallen into disrepair. It was empty. And so we kind of, you know, found it with locations. Again, had this beautiful kind of skyline behind it, but, you know, painted the building, made our own kind of facade to it also to have the Heartland Press element there. You know, made our own kind of sign for the parking lot, kind of put all that together. And then interior wise, took inspiration from the real space from that in the 90s and early 2000s, but ended up sort of making our own covers for the Heartland Press, you know, based on the real This Land covers, and sort of, you know, designing a bunch of those that we could run them off as newsprint and use them as our wallpaper there. And, you know, it's funny, we again found a local printer for them. It was this place in this small newspaper in a neighboring town, the Sepulpa Herald, I think. And, you know, the art director went out there a couple times to check on the printing, and, you know, he was like, yeah, it's one guy
He doesn't have a phone.
He doesn't have a phone.
Or an email.
Yeah.
Cash only.
Yeah, cash only. And he's just there all night running off these newspapers for us. And like, you can run in and yell, stop the presses. And like, there's a button there to stop the presses and everything. And so, yeah. So with that, and, you know, again, thinking through all the details, which Tavf is so amazing at in terms of thinking through the Elias's workspace, the editor's office, and what he's doing in process, you know, what all the spaces mean to everybody, and making them feel real and lived in.
What also is amazing about this scene is that all the extras in this scene are actually all the original people that worked for This Land that Sterling called in to be in this scene. So this is an actual building that they had all worked in like 15, 20 years previously on this amazing publication, and they're walking into it for the first time and seeing it more or less exactly how it was when they were there creating this long form magazine. And I wasn't actually there when they all walked in, but I heard people were emotional and they were so excited, and they said it was like stepping back in time. And so that was really fun to be able to do that for them.
That's great. Having experiences like that's fantastic, and helping a small business like Finding the Sky with the Press. I mean, I'm sure it was a boost to its whole existence, you know, breathing life back into areas that need it. You know, it's great.
Yeah. Totally, 100%. Yeah, I mean, I think this set also, you know, just it was important to Sterling to actually be shooting in a place that was in North Tulsa also, and kind of be representing the neighborhood, but also, you know, physically be there, and also be kind of returning those resources in terms of the location, in terms of everything else that's there to the community. And so, you know, we found this, again, another one of these kind of just really interesting, kind of really raw spaces, and went to work with the mural and the wallpaper and the wood paneling, the flooring, and all the other elements, you know, the signage. And, you know, again, speaking of the building the backstory is a fun thing. We kind of, again, like really sort of thought through, okay, what could this space have been? It wasn't, the Tulsa Beat is not a magazine that's, you know, been leasing this office for forever, and they didn't, you know, build this space themselves. So what's the story of the space? And came with the idea that, inspired by another kind of place that we had scouted and looked at, but didn't end up shooting in, that it was an old, you know, beauty supply place. And that's why, you know, you see the chair that Ethan's sitting in that photo in the top right corner. That's, you know, another kind of older beauty parlor chair. And there are those kind of things scattered there also. And, you know, you see that sign in the upper left-hand corner, Apache Beauty Supply, just sort of hints at, you know, this is just a space that they kind of moved in on, and now they're kind of made it their own in these ways. But the wallpaper, is that, you know, a choice by the character, or is that something that he's adapted to and that he just likes having there? You know, all these different kind of, you know, hidden backstories or little small things too.
Yeah, the exterior of that building is fantastic. I mean, and the lines and the clear story windows and all that. It's just the sign is perfect. Did y'all build that sign?
We did, yeah, built that sign.
It was a great little touch.
That was fun. And, you know, Killer Mike, who I love also as a musician, he kind of walked in and you know, sat down and said, oh, you know, this feels right. Like, this feels authentic. You know, this feels right for the character and for spaces that I've been in that feel like, yeah, they're analogous to this. And that, you know, always feels good. That always kind of, sensitive.
Yeah, his space was fun. The details on that Desk for really fun. Just like
Yeah.
it's his eating space, it's his workspace, it's where he's probably sleeping sometimes.
Yeah,
That was really fun to sort of like that little plaque in the corner that says, "Well, isn't that special?" is like a pretty like prime example of seeing something on Facebook Marketplace that's like an hour and a half, and you're like, "Is it worth it?" We're like, "We gotta have it."
Mhm.
and
What was it? The church lady used to use. That was her quote from Saturday Night Live.
yeah,
You're like, it's
exactly.
just so handy. It's like
Yeah.
it's like really sun worn. It's clearly from the '90s or
Yeah.
something. We just
And
Yeah,
it kills me. His eye patch matches his shirt.
yeah. Again, just costumes coming.
We talk about the comedy of it all. It's so funny.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing too, is with the, props also, like we kind of said earlier, it's like we like to bring people together in the art department meetings. Props is always a big part of that. And everybody's kind of in those meetings and the graphics meetings too and everything. I just like every opportunity we can to kind of get people together and talk about why we're doing what we're doing and how we're doing it. And that just kind of bleeds through into all the details and into all their work and that excitement and enthusiasm. Yeah, there's the Gap Band poster up there, which is, the Gap Band is from Tulsa. It's, as you know, I'm sure you know, and that was another kind of cultural touchdown that made sense. And I swear we'll stop talking about this in a moment, but there is a Christmas tree story about, speaking of the crew being joyful.
Oh, there's in the reverse of this, there's this like 1960s like metal tinseled Christmas tree that we just found and we're like, oh, we love this thing. Why do we need it? I don't know. We just have to put it in there. And so we're dressing the set and I was like, oh man, I wish we had ornaments for this thing, like some cool ornaments. We just, we're going a mile a minute. We didn't get any. And our teamster outside, our trucker, he whittles and we're like, hey, do you want to like make an ornament for us out of, he had his knife and wood in the car. And after we dressed that set that night, he had like 6 ornaments, like hand whittled ornaments for us. So proud.
I was so happy.
Precious.
Yeah.
He was so excited
Awesome.
that these things were going on the tree, and like I couldn't thought of anything better than this.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
those little details.
Nice to get the game involved. Yeah. Yeah. Again, we kind of built this wall here also that you see that has the window in, or that has the light in, just to sort of, delineate the space a bit, but also, make sure that we had a lighting element there and give us another opportunity for a texture like this wallpaper. Make it seem
that wallpaper that was like some vintage stock, and we probably found like 5 rolls. We're like, we have just enough to fit the wall that you guys are building, so no one messes up.
It was actually not quite enough. And the scenic looked at me like I was crazy when I was like, just when you get to the end of it, just stop. And it'll just be a hard edge. She was like, are you sure? Like, are you? And I was like, yes, like, let's do it. It's going to be fun. Yeah.
Happy accidents.
Yeah. Yeah, Washburn Ranch, again, another great set deck moment with the curtains, coming through with the W for the Washburn.
Yeah, we got those custom made. We like picked the graphic and the graphics on there, the W and the cowboy. And so we got those printed on there in OKC. And
Yeah,
I felt like that was kind of a little throwback to his youth. They had that
yeah, exactly. And he is like he is a youthful, like he's very boyish in his ways. And like, we don't get to know him for a while down the road, but he's like a very pure hearted thinker, and so I think that also lends to that.
Yeah, wants to be a writer, is in his own kind of little world of imagination and everything, and just this fanciful kind of lasso W seemed to play into that graphics wise. And
they just talk about that he is the one in the family that always goes counter to what this family wants to do. So he is the artist trapped in this business family, obviously.
Yeah, all the great little details, and kind of, again, he's somebody who's very into the whole Western iconography and the whole cowboy iconography, and so when we had the wagon wheel kind of light, or the just even the artwork and everything around it that sort of speaks to that. Wanted it to feel like, again, he's kind of lost in his own little world up there a bit.
And these are indigenous artists. His name is AC Blue Eagle, and so he's pretty famous for these glassware sets that he makes. And so it's really hard to find actually a full set that comes on the hand carved tray. And so we were pretty excited when we found that.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. It's
Yeah.
absolutely gorgeous. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Antiquary, great location. Found a space, and then I think it's it was an antique shop just with a different vibe and kind of different places. So one of those things where always a fun conversation with the line producer where they're like, wait, why do you need money? It's already a
They're like,
it's like
it's the wrong antique.
exactly. You don't understand. Exactly.
So we basically took the stuff out of there because it was very like kind of grandma, like little porcelain plates. And we're like, that's not what he's doing. Like more curated eye. And so we kind of stripped it of everything in there and brought in our. Line producer was like, why? Why do you need to do this?
I'm sure you've had that experience before.
But he could actually see on the counter here. So we put that AC Blue Eagle set on the counter as if that is something that he bought from the estate sale. So we're also tying in all these different scenes and together to connect this story.
Yeah, and that's just the real Leroy Chapman, just kind of speaking to that connection a bit. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, the van was a character for sure.
Yeah, that was something we were really proud of. That, and on the back it says that you're doing it wrong, kind of a tag, and that was inspired by the real Leroy Chapman and something that was important to Sterling. And just to kind of capture that spirit, have the tapes in there, have all the mess and the junk, and how that was.
Well, to put that Scux can in there, which was fictionalized energy drink that we got kind of made famous on Res Dogs. We just made it up, and we had all these leftover cans in our storage unit. We're like, well, let's give them a Scux.
Yeah, exactly. A nice crossover moment.
Around in the back of it.
Yeah.
Is there going to be more?
I hope so. Yeah, I think we're hopeful. It's funny to be back here again now, just for some different family or different cultural events, and talking to some of the people on the show who kind of live here, and just talking about we're people are kind of setting up quietly, getting ready for it, quietly thinking about
everyone's. I mean, I went to Whole Foods the other day and got asked by someone, "Is there a season 2?"
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's a tough thing when you do these series. You don't know how limited they're going to be. Is it
exactly.
It's going to be 3 or 4 years, 5 years of this? You never know, right? But I sure hope there is more, and if there's not, I'll keep rewatching it over and over.
Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. And
is there anything else you think that the viewing audience would want to know that I haven't touched upon? It might be a good little insight into y'all's creative process in creating these worlds.
I mean, I think the questions have all been great. I think well, I guess the one thing I will say is that in the Tulsa beat, there's something putting that set together was an instance where I kind of knew that we wanted a larger piece on the wall that was going to be a mural, something along those lines, and that that specific set was supposed to speak to, Greenwood and the experience of the Tulsa Race Massacre and the North Tulsa predominantly Black community, something that was important to Sterling. And so for that, making a mural into that space also, we kind of did what we've, done on Reservation Dogs. And what, I always try to do is to bring, the actual community that's being represented into the creative process. And, we collaborated with a muralist named Alexander Taman, who had done some kind of Greenwood murals around Tulsa also. And, really sort of collaborated to make sure that we have that authenticity, and that, again, we're being entrusted to tell the story of the community. We want to make sure that, we're telling their story, and that they're the people who are actually telling the story in that way. So,
oh yeah, just to add on to that for the Tulsa beat, in terms of like the artwork, and that there's this guy in Tulsa, a local guy. He goes by Mad Dog. His name's Kenny, and he lives in government housing, and he's sort of a local in Tulsa, and he sells roses for $1, and he'll be at the gas stations, the bars late at night, and trying to make money and sell roses. But I knew that he painted, because I had seen something somewhere that he had painted something. I was like, oh, we should get Mad Dog. Like, we'll commission a piece from him and like give him some cash. And so I found him at the gas station one day selling roses, and I was like, you want to make a piece for us? And so a week later, he had done that amazing airbrushed piece you see right behind Cyrus's head. That's the rose, like surrounded by the midnight sky. And so that's another thing. The people that are Tulsa based and know Tulsa, when they walked onto the set, they're like, is that Mad Dogs? I think, yeah.
These are some of the roses from Mad Dog.
Just bought roses from the other night. We had seen him.
It's Sterling at the Mercury Lounge here.
His birthday a couple nights ago, and we were at the Mercury Lounge bar, and Mad Dog came up with his roses.
Yeah, we got to get some of these.
Yeah.
Well, that I must say is a perfect way to wrap this up. That's a story I would have hated to have missed. Both Tavf Sampson and Brandon Tonner-Connolly for joining me in this wonderful conversation and sharing your insights into your creative process on Inside the Set with Set Decor. I hope we get more of it, and I'll be watching, if it's not this, for wherever y'all go next is something I want to see.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah,
Hi.
thanks so much.
Fun.
Yeah, thanks for having us. And yeah, thanks, Dave. Like I said, big fan of your work as well. So really great to be able to talk and sit down.
Oh, great. Well, thank you very much. Y'all take care.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Inside the Set with Set Decor. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and visit our website, setdecor.com.